Okay, I think it's 7 o'clock. We have at least 12 people here. So we'll try and get started. And again, just briefly, I'll check the chat, but hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint now. It should be the opening slide. Again, this is our game judge training. As long as it's not kind of in the way, I might try and leave the chat up so I can see it. Right. Again, all the information that we're going to go over today is available at robofest.net. So we recommend that you go there after this presentation. Again, you can print out score sheets in a from PDF format. And again, the final version of the rules, I think, was updated on January 7th. So again, you can make sure you get a copy of the current rules. Then for today's agenda, again, first we're going to review the rules. We'll concentrate on the judge roles. We'll talk about, again, what needs to be done, again, especially with the judges helping up with the setup at sites. And then, of course, the actual competition schedule. First, the work time, when students can work on their robots. Then the impound procedures, when you collect the robots before competition. And then, of course, setting up the playing fields. Judges will need to place trash objects. They'll also need to make sure they start and place the robot in the correct starting orientation. Then some tips. Again, what judges need to do at the end of the round. Score keeping, how the judges felt the score sheets. And we have several videos. So hopefully we'll have time to look at about 5 videos for practice scoring at the end. Right, so that's the agenda for today. I think only myself, I'm Dr. Chris Cartwright from Robofest. We also have Shannon Polonis, the Robofest coordinator, will be looking at the chat. So if you have any questions, please use the chat function. And there, Shannon just said hello. Okay, again, the official rules were finalized on January 7th, I think, or at least it's version 1.7.1. Oh, sorry, it was January 27th. So, but I guess it was the 7th version. So there were a few edits. So hopefully, again, you have found the updated rules on robofest.net. And again, if you want to, you can actually practice with your own scoring sheets available at robofest.net. But hopefully we'll see again this year. We tried to make the scoring maybe simpler than some prior years. First, just going over the rules. Again, there's 3 main tasks that the robots need to do. They can do them in any order. So again, one of the tasks is to locate a ball on the stand. The stand will be a water bottle placed in the center of the playing field. And again, the robot needs to use a pencil as a bat to hit a ping pong ball on top of that ball stand. So that's one of the major tasks. The second major task is to find 2 trash objects and remove them completely from the playing field. Again, typically that will be white vinyl. And again, the trash objects need to be removed completely from the playing field to earn credit for that second task. The third task, there are Lego blocks, which are going to be on the bases, again, at 3 of the 4 corners. Not the home base corner, which is one corner marked with a foil base. You can see home base there in the picture. And again, those Lego blocks need to be removed completely from the field to get credit for task number 3. But the robot, again, can do those tasks in any order. Again, it can complete tasks partially. It could remove like 1 trash object, then remove a base, then bat a ball. And then it could, of course, complete other types of tasks. How points are earned. Again, one of the major things, again, is trying to hit the ball. Actually, I should go back to the previous, I forgot to point out the fence there. Again, the robot is trying to hit the ball between kind of those 2 uprights, or sort of like the foul poles. Again, to hit it over the fence, but between those poles, or actually at least between the plane. Again, you can kind of think of those poles as extending on forever. Again, it doesn't matter how high you hit the ball, as long as it goes at least between kind of like that vertical area there. But it must clear the fence to be considered a home run. And a home run will be the maximum number of points. Again, the poles are considered in, so if it hits a pole, or basically if it would go straight over, if the pole extended and would hit it, that's a home run. If the ball actually hits the fence, that's only going to be kind of like not quite as many points. So the ball must completely clear the fence to be a home run. Right. Points are also earned, again, once the robot has to visit the base to remove those Lego blocks. And again, the visit is defined once the Lego block is completely removed. Right. Again, points are also again earned for each trash object that's completely removed from the field. Robots also, to earn the maximum number of points, the robot needs to return back to home base, stop, and clearly rest. That's must be at the end of the mission. So once the robot comes to home base, stops, and rests, the robot can't earn any more points. And again, for all Robofest game competitions, the robots must be completely autonomous, no remote control. Let's see, I guess someone raised their hand. If you have a question, Jeff, if you could type the question in the chat, Shannon will try and answer it, or if it's something that applies to everyone, or Neil has a question, it looks like, as well. Or I can pause for Shannon if she has something to answer someone's question. Or at least looking at Neil's question, basically, if the robot doesn't stop, it doesn't get credit for returning home. I mean, the robot can cross home base as many times as it needs to. It does not have to do the bases in order. The robot does need to stay on, or at least within 5 centimeters of the playing field. It can't go far away from the playing field, but we'll get to that in later slides. And I do want to emphasize that there is a 2-minute limit for all tasks. And again, if others, again, Neil asked one question using the chat. If others have questions, Shannon will try to address them. Some of these questions hopefully are already in our FAQs. Right. So again, main thing we're just concentrating right now, again, is what are the possible ways of earning points? And we'll be, yeah, hopefully once we look at the score sheet, I think we'll answer some of the questions that are going up right now. So I think I'll move on to the next slide. Okay. Violations, again, for judges. And for the moment, hopefully it's a little bit easier to see maybe without the chat, but at least Shannon will hopefully get my attention. Actually, I'll try to make sure I pause at the end of each slide if we have questions that need to be answered right away. Right, but Shannon should be looking at your chat questions. Okay, so violations. Again, if a violation occurs, again, the robot is not allowed to earn any additional points, at least until the robot either restarts, or again, there's only a maximum of 1 reset allowed. So for instance, after a first violation, teams do have the option of asking for reset. If they reset, it's a complete reset. The judges reset the field into the starting position. All possible points earned are lost. And again, whatever happens after the reset is the only chance for the team to earn points for that round. Again, after a second violation, it's of course going to be whatever happened after the first violation will be what the teams earn points for. Again, teams don't have to reset. If, for instance, before the first violation, they're happy with the points that they've earned, or they don't think they can earn more points, the team can decline, the reset. But again, basically, once a violation happens, again, the robot cannot continue to earn points after any violation. And of course, after a maximum of 2 violations, the run will stop regardless, and the runs, of course, also stop if the 2-minute time limit is reached. So here are the violations the judges need to be watching for. Again, humans are not allowed to contact or touch, the robot, playing field materials. Again, basically, humans, in fact, are required to stand 1 meter away from the playing field, just to make sure, again, that neither of those violation categories 1 or 2 happen. But again, if the robot does do something in categories 3 or 4, then the human could, pick up their robot if they want to reset. The robot is not allowed to touch the fence. The bat is considered part of the robot. So again, if the robot, goes off the playing field in the fence direction, anytime the robot or any part of the robot, including the bat, touches the fence, you stop the run right there. The team can either ask for a reset or the judges score whatever had happened prior to the robot touching the fence. The fourth type of violation is if the robot completely leaves the field. Again, that means that the robot is more than 5 centimeters away from the playing field. The entire part of the robot needs to be that far or further. In general, the 5 centimeters may not be clearly marked, so the judges will have to use discretion. Again, some robots may make very wide turns. We recommend that they try and stay always within that 5 centimeters. But basically, this category number 4 is to make sure that robots aren't, running off in a total random direction and totally leaving the playing field. So again, it'll be the judge's discretion whether or not the robot has completely left the field, being more than 5 centimeters away. And I think I'll pause if you have any questions about the violations.
Dr. Cartwright, this is Shannon. I am going to address, Srinivas had a question that he emailed in regarding the 5 centimeters, and that is the part where the robot touches the floor, being 5 centimeters away. We aren't going to review the top of the robot or the outermost part of the robot. Basically, if the wheels are off 5 centimeters or the body of the robot is off 5 centimeters, that's what we'll be looking for.
Great, thank you. Hopefully, is that clear, everyone? Again, thanks. Sorry I forgot to respond to that, but I'm glad that Shannon remembered.
Yeah, we will also address this when we talk about the starting location. We have a little more current photographs of the field setup. The field setup that is in the original photograph on the first part of the rules is old. We have changed the configuration a little bit for the qualifiers. So the photographs that are coming up later in the site setup and all of those photographs will be more current, and you'll be able to see kind of more what we're talking about because there's pictures with the robots as well. So hopefully that will answer your questions regarding the 5 centimeters.
Okay, and of course, if you have other questions, again, please use the chat feature, although hopefully to make sure that we finish within our allotted time, I'll move on to the next slide for now. Again, I think we'll also revisit some of these violations later when we talk about the worksheet. So again, if the team asks for a reset, again, I think I actually mentioned some of this earlier, but I'd like to reiterate it. Again, all points are basically cleared. Again, the field is completely reset. You basically pretend that anything that happened prior to the reset didn't happen. So again, trash objects have to go back to their original locations. All of the Lego blocks on the bases have to go back. And again, of course, the ping pong ball, if that was hit off of the tee, goes back as well. It's a complete reset. The 2-minute countdown never stops. So again, judges, it's going to be very important if a team asks you to reset to try and do that as quickly as possible. So again, the teams don't lose too many seconds. But this year, it's only a complete reset. And again, it's not required. Teams have the option. They can either accept a reset or decline it, but a maximum of 1 reset. And the players can ask for a reset at any time. They don't have to wait for a violation. For instance, if the robot is not doing the right program or something, the students can ask for a reset at any time. And of course, if a violation occurs, judges, you should check and see if the teams want to reset. Sometimes they may forget that that's an option. I do want to emphasize there's only 1 complete reset allowed. And if this team does ask for a reset, there is a penalty. So they certainly need to take that into account, whether or not they choose to ask for a reset. So any questions on resets? Okay, I think I'll move on to the next slide. Again, going over the rules. Again, the task can be done in any order, but it's very important. The final task, if teams want to earn a perfect score, the robot must stop at home, clearly stop and rest at the end after all other tasks have been completed. If a robot does, for instance, come home early, and stops, the judges probably should check with the team again to make sure whether or not the robot is done. Certainly some teams might program the robot to stop and then go on to do other tasks. But the robot is only required to stop at home at the very end to earn the maximum points. Again, basically a legal hit is only when the ball is moved off with contact with the pencil. But again, if the robot bumps the ball off, there can be some points awarded for that, but it's actually a maximum of just 7 points. We'll get to that to the score sheet. So to get, again, a very good score, it's going to be very important that the teams bat the ball using the pencil. Number 3 on this slide, we will have unknown factors. Again, those will be unveiled, and we have a table, I think, actually we're on slide 8, so in about 4 slides from now, we'll talk in detail about what additional information students will only learn the day of the competition. Then on competitions, after unknown factors are unveiled, students have 30 minutes, again, to try and modify either the robot or their programs before each round. So 30 minutes after unveiling for round 1, there'll be different factors for round 2. Each competition is 2 rounds. Again, here's a picture showing the playing field materials. Again, in the slides, we'll be referring to some of these dimensions. D1 is the distance from the playing field to the fence. The length of the fence is marked with that letter L. H2 is the height of the fence. We'll actually, I think, be able to see that, I think, in the next slide more clearly. And H3, the height of the poles. Again, in terms of the bases, home base is marked with a foil tape. First base is also marked with foil. Second and third base do not have foil on them. H is going to be the height of the playing field, W the width of the playing field. For junior competition, the width and the height are the same. The playing field will be a square. For seniors, in general, those dimensions will differ. So seniors will typically have a rectangular playing field. D3 is the distance from the bottles to the trash objects. Again, that distance can change from round 1 to round 2. But for each round, again, all teams will have trash objects located the same distance from the center object. Wait, and I just saw a question. There's no tape on bases 2 and 3. Just those red and blue are supposed to be the Lego blocks, is what's marked there. And it's only aluminum foil for home base and first base. Then you can see at the bottom of the picture, again, D2, I believe is going to be a fixed 5 centimeters. So that will be the starting distance measured to the base of the robot. Again, whatever part of the robot is closest to the playing field, depending on the orientation. So for instance, in the picture, we show an example where the robot is required to face west. Again, robot starting orientations, what is marked as the front of the robot must face either north, west, east, or south, and that will be announced, prior to the 30-minute work period before round 1 and round 2. So in this picture, for instance, the right wheel would be the closest part of the base of the robot to the playing field. That would be what is 5 centimeters away from the playing field. Right, so there's at least our first picture of the playing field. And again, next slide, again, H3 is the height of the poles. H2, again, the height of the fence. For the competition, again, there'll be minimum and maximum values for all those dimensions. Again, for instance, the length of the fence and the height of the fence and the poles. Again, those fences will be, again, used actually the same fence for both rounds 1 and round 2. And so again, once that is unveiled actually for practice, that'll be the same throughout the day. Also, of course, the playing field dimensions, the width and height of the playing field will not change. So again, it'll be the same playing field. Sorry about that, by accident. At least all those top dimensions are the same for both round 1 and round 2. Again, the distance from the playing field to the fence can be different from round 1 to round 2, although again, there's a maximum and minimum distance for those. Again, the distance from the robot to the playing field, the starting distance, that's always 5 centimeters. And finally, another unknown is actually, I guess, never unveiled, is the distance of the trash objects from the center bottle. So again, there's a minimum 10 centimeters. The maximum is probably, of course, obviously the bottles, I think, have to be on the playing field. So at least if you can use some geometry, you should be able to compute that maximum value. But again, teams will not be told how far away. They just know that it will be a fixed distance. So in general, teams will need to program the robots to find these unknown objects using sensors. We certainly recommend the use of sensors to find the trash objects. Any questions then about the playing field? At least the dimensions of it. Okay, the next slide, again, just some specifics about playing field materials. Again, of course, the floor color can vary from site to site. We do want to make sure, though, of course, that the white colored playing field is on something that's darker, again, for contrast. So again, some teams, again, if you have a dark floor, that could be fine. Otherwise, if you have a light colored floor, we definitely recommend that you place like a dark black paper or vinyl for contrast between the playing field and the outside the playing field. Again, field material, again, paper or vinyl.
Dr. Cartwright, there is
yes.
an update to that. We will be supplying the black gaffer's tape or the mats with the for the site host. So there will be the black edge as they will see in the upcoming photographs.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Yes, I think that was not in the official rules, but yeah, that hopefully will be helpful then with the, again, that'll probably create the best contrast with gaffer's tape or black vinyl. Okay, again, let's see the fence. I think it's actually made of sort of, let's see, forget the exact material, but again, I think a lot of these, again, if you're a site host, we'll provide like fences set up for you and things, and at least the drinking straws and everything. The poles are drinking straws. Again, aluminum foil for home and first base. We'll have at least a water bottle in the center of the field, 500 milliliters standard size. And I believe you do use batteries inside the water bottles to weight the bottle down. Otherwise, though, the bottle does not have water in it. And again, of course, we'll make sure all the playing fields have the same type of bottle. But again, of course, this could vary slightly from site to site. And again, teams in general are allowed to measure all the dimensions of the playing field materials, including like the height of the bottle. Standard ping pong ball, trash objects, for instance, for the warm-up we had, I guess about almost 2 weeks ago, I think now. They were red or blue plastic cups, but they could be other types of trash objects. And again, the locations, again, the trash objects will not be placed in their competition locations until after the robots are impounded. So the location of trash objects will always be unknown for all rounds. We use Lego cubes for the base objects. And again, at the start of each round 1 and 2, we'll tell the front of the robot needs to face west, north, east, or south. But that information will be given the robot orientation prior to the 30-minute work period. So students, again, should be able to modify their programs taking into account the starting orientation. And again, actually, I think the material that we're going over right now, I think all is basically taken directly from the official rules. So I strongly encourage all coaches and judges to familiarize themselves with the official rules. But we definitely wanted to emphasize some of those today. Things judges need to be looking for in terms of the robots. Again, this year robots are allowed to expand to hit the ball. Initially, judges need to check the initial size of the robot. Has to be, again, no more than 35 centimeters in width and length, and also height. Again, I think typically we'll provide like little cardboard measuring boards to check those dimensions. Judges should check the robot before it expands. After expanding, again, for instance, the robot could use an arm or something that would expand holding the pencil. Judges will actually use a pencil. We'll actually have a picture of this, I think, later in these slides to show how the judges can check the initial size of the robot and the expanded size. But this will be one of the main things judges need to check during impounding are the robot dimensions. And again, once it expands, it can be no more than 54 by 54 by 54 centimeters. Right. Again, there's no weight limitation, so the robots can be as heavy or light, so no need to use any scales. Again, for the official pencil, it needs to be a standard maximum length 19 centimeter pencil. The pencil can be shorter. Again, it needs to be a standard pencil, so the diameter should be between 6 and 7 millimeters. So for instance, it can't be anything fancy like triangular or carpenter pencils. Again, just standard, I guess, wood pencils. And typically, of course, those might be hexagonal or round, at least around the sort of circumference of the pencil, I guess. Right. And again, the pencils, it's possible that they might attach them to the robot using tape or other types of materials. It's very important, though, that for it to be a legal bat, the pencil surface must be just a standard pencil surface, possibly including eraser. Again, teams can either use sort of the sharpened or unsharpened edge or an eraser to legally hit the ball. Right. Again, there's no limit on the number of sensors, no limit on the number of motors. We do, of course, require that all materials used on the robots be safe to use to humans. And again, they can't damage the playing field or other robots. We do allow any type of material. Certainly, I think like NXT and EV3 robots by Lego are certainly the most popular, but any type of material and robot kit is okay. Again, you can use tape, glue, bolts, rubber bands, again, basically any type of material as long as it is safe for humans. Another thing that judges will definitely need to make sure they inspect when students bring their robots to impound is there needs to be an ID tag. Again, that's primarily to make sure the judges give the correct team the correct score. And we also need require that there be a label identifying the front sight of the robot. Again, for site hosts, I think we'll provide you with some labels just in case students forget to label the front of their robot. But again, it's very important for the judges that the front of the robot be labeled so that way the robots will be put in the correct orientation. Because remember, the north, south, east, and west face direction of the robot depends on whatever is considered the front of the robot. Right, so again, main thing I like to emphasize for judges, again, when you're inspecting the robots, check the size of the robot, both initially and expanded. Also check, is there an ID tag? Again, the robot's number, team number, and check that the front of the robot is labeled. And basically anything else is okay in terms of the robot, as long as they have a standard maximum length 19 centimeter pencil. Any questions about the robot specifications?
We do have a question from a chat. I was going to bring this up when we got to the photograph regarding the impound measuring. However, we want to mention that regardless of however the robot expands, whether it's a pencil on one side and an arm on another or something, that the entire maximum size of the robot when it's expanded can be no more than 54 centimeters. So we will try to reiterate that again when we go through the photograph showing how we measure with the measuring board. So, but that's a good question, that we really need to focus on the maximum size of 54.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see. I'll move on to the next slide. But again, if you have more questions, please enter them through the chat. Again, main difference between junior and senior, again, is that for juniors, the field is a square. For seniors, a rectangle. D1, remember, is the distance between the field and the fence. Basically, the fences will be slightly closer for junior teams than for senior teams, although there still, again, was a maximum and minimum distance. A major difference that judges will need to check when robots are impounded is for juniors, there is a limit of only one controller, again, basically or at least one active robot brain. So again, judges, you'll need to check and make sure, again, there's not multiple controllers on a junior robot. Senior robots are allowed any number of controllers, so judges will not have to worry about checking the number of controllers for senior robots. Okay. And I think we probably need to move a little bit faster, or else we're going to be here, I think, longer than an hour and a half. We have about, I think, 45 slides to go. So I'll try to make sure I emphasize the essentials, and we may need to skip over some of the less essential things. But again, this PowerPoint, I think I forgot to mention earlier, but this, I think, is available up on the Robofest website. So if you need to review it, you can get access to this PowerPoint later. Okay, so then judges, again, how the rounds are played. Again, each competition, 2 rounds. Judges, you'll be responsible for setting up the field configuration for practice and for both rounds 1 and round 2. Again, we unveil unknown factors, and the main thing that will change, I think, after unknown factors are unveiled, again, will be the distance of the fence from the playing field. That'll be one of the main setup factors. The trash objects, judges will only set those up in the actual competition locations after impounding. Again, once we unveil unknown factors, there's 30-minute work period. It's going to be very important that judges help, again, we want only students working on the robots and the programs. So again, parents and coaches are not allowed to assist students during that 30-minute time period. We strongly recommend that judges, assist like the proctors, to make sure, again, there are no parents or adults in the pit area. In some cases, if you have a dedicated room, that might be one of the easiest ways to maintain the integrity of the pit. Okay, again, 30 minutes, again, is the times teams have from the unknown factors to when they have to submit their robots before competition. Typically, again, we'll give teams about 5 to 10 minutes if there's a lot of robots to impound the robots after that 30-minute time period is expired. Again, while students are impounding the robots, that's when the judges inspect the robots. Again, checking the basic size of the robot, the expanded size, and the ID stickers and the front side label. And again, if you have questions about those, please ask on the chat. Otherwise, I think I'll keep going because there's actually, of course, several things to do during the 2 rounds. That's just our first slide. Again, after impounding, again, that's the time when the judges will set up the playing fields with the trash objects. We'll have some, I think, slides showing that later on. And I think we actually, yes, there will be in general a jig for the trash objects will be provided by the Robofest office. Again, that'll be site host. You'll receive that with the other competition materials. And we'll explain again how those jigs can be used in a later slide. Site hosts, you get to determine the order. One common strategy is just to use numeric order. You may be starting from smallest to largest. I can either do same order or different orders. Sometimes we'll do reverse order for round 2. Again, the playing fields in general, unless you have a very large area, space may be at a premium. So that's the main reason for requiring only a maximum of 2 contestants per team at the playing field. And in fact, for impounding, for warm-up, we required that just 1 contestant impound the robot, since space was at a very premium there. Wait, for robot positioning, I think we decided since we're going to provide the black gaffer's tape around the field, that actually will mark out the 5 centimeters distance away from the field. So instead of number 9, I think we will not use a jig to start positioning the robot. You can just use the black gaffer's tape taped around the playing field. Again, number 10, we do require that the contestants move at least 1 meter from the field. We also ask that the judges move that distance away from the field as well. The main reason for that, again, is so that the robots don't accidentally sense players or judges instead of like the trash objects or the bottles. Again, some robots may be using some sensors that depend on distance. And this will also, of course, help make sure that the students don't accidentally touch the playing field of the robot and incur an unnecessary violation. Okay, then again, we'll talk a lot about scoring in later slides, but just want to emphasize again, it's going to be very important that the judges watch where the ping pong ball is hit. We saw that a lot of these robots actually hit these balls with quite a lot of force, and they go pretty fast, pretty far. So it may be a little difficult unless you're watching very closely to see whether or not something was a home run. So that's one of the very important jobs of a judge, is to make sure you watch the ping pong ball very carefully, especially when it's hit. Everything else other than that pretty much is scored at the end of the round. So again, like the bases, trash objects, judges don't have to worry about that until after the 2-minute period. The ball stand, again, when the robot hits the ball, it is not allowed, or at least it's expected not to move the ball stand, although that location is only checked after the run is over. So certainly a possible strategy is for teams, if they accidentally move the ball stand, they might be able to return it to its initial position. If that happens before the 2 minutes, again, they might not, there's basically a penalty if the ball stand moves. See, I'll try and finish at least this group of slides, then pause for questions. Judges, it's very important that you have the team members sign and initial the score sheets to make sure that they agree with the score. Coaches, again, you should emphasize to your team members that if they do not agree with the judge's scoring, they should not sign and initial the score until, for instance, they consult with the chief judge. Again, to basically, again, if the judges made any errors or anything, that should be decided before team members sign the scores. Again, basically, once a team member signs the score sheet, they're confirming that they agree with the scoring of the judges. Then, hopefully, as a double check, we're going to display the entered scores on a screen if you have a screen available. We certainly want to give teams a chance to validate, make sure the data is entered correctly. Finally, in terms of how we determine winners at competitions, against the average final score of the 2 rounds is the first thing that is considered. If 2 teams have the same average score of the 2 rounds, then we'll go for a tiebreaker. First, we'll check if one team has a better score from one of the 2 rounds. Again, if 2 teams have both the same average score and the best score, then we'll look at, again, how much time is left. And in general, again, the team that completed the task quickest, which would mean they have the highest amount of time left. Again, judges, you'll need to record the time left, which again, if you have a timer that counts down, you just look at the number on the screen when the robot stops at home base. Again, to get credit for finishing the time, the robot does need to stop. If 2 teams complete, basically have the exact same scores and the exact same time from the best score, then it's possible, hopefully it'll be a rare case, but again, a rerun then would be the 3rd tiebreaker. And we have a sample down here at the bottom of the slide. If you notice here, again, here's a situation where 3 teams had the same average score. So again, we would then go to the first tiebreaker. Then on this slide here, right, teams A and B had the best score of 100, right, whereas team C, right, its best score was only 90. So then we would need to decide between team A or B using the second tiebreaker. And for instance, if team A had 15 seconds left as opposed to 10 seconds left, they would be the faster team. They would be rank 1. Team B, again, that had the same highest score but slower time would be rank 2. And again, team C, even though it had the same average score, because its best score is lower, would be ranked 3. So these are all the slides, again, basically about what judges need to do during the 2 rounds. So I'll pause for questions, or give Shannon a chance if she has questions she'd like to answer now.
There was a question regarding expansion, and I'm not sure I understand the question. The question is, let me scroll up. Sorry. Does changing the pieces or motors by adding to the robot count as expanding? The robots are presented to the impound table intact and measured, and then impounded. So I don't see how a team could expand a robot by adding to the robot when they're presenting the robot for impound. So I hope that that answers your question. Let me see who asked that question. Bianu, is that who asked the question? So I hope that answers your question. Okay, yes, okay, good. Yeah, no one is supposed to add pieces. Once the 30-minute work time is over, the robot is done. So the expansion is just any moving parts, the swing out bat, anything that would perhaps expand to push a trash object. So the widest part, end to end, can only be 54. So that includes anything that goes out on one side to grab a trash object, on the other side to hit the ball. The entire dimension is what we are measuring. So there would be no additional time or adding to the robot at that point. It's just we're adding the robot as presented. So that's how we're measuring. Okay, that was the end of that.
Okay. Again, I think we need to move on, but certainly, again, if we don't get your questions right away, hopefully we'll get them all answered by the end of the presentation today. Right, moving on, next slides. Again, for the location of the ball stand, again, it's going to be a 7.5 centimeter diameter circle. Again, that'll be drawn, again, with the very center of that circle, the very center of the field. And again, notice the ball needs to be, bottle needs to be placed so that it's entirely inside of that circle. So it's going to be very important for the judges to make sure that you're careful when you place that bottle that's completely inside the circle, because again, if the bottle is moved outside the circle, teams will lose points. All right, and again, if any part of the bottle goes outside the circle, and that's actually including the entire bottle. So for instance, notice the bottle is actually kind of wider in the center than at the bottom. For instance, it's possible that the actual bottom of the bottle could still be inside the circle, but if basically any type of the bottle has gone outside the circle, it's going to be considered an obvious out. And again, judge, we actually recommend, I think on the next slide, to use kind of a Lego block, sort of check whether or not a bottle is in or out. But it's the judge's discretion, again, about whether or not it is in or out. And again, you're checking to see if the bottle remains inside the location. This is only checked at the end of the round, not during the round. During the round, the main thing to check is where the ping pong ball goes. For instance here, judges would actually recommend for making sure you place the bottle. Again, if the bottle is completely inside the circle, you should be able to have a Lego block, go up and directly touch that circle at that base. If, for instance, any part of the bottle is outside of the circle, it should be impossible to line up an edge of the block with that circle, right? Notice the block should be clearly not touching the circle if there's an obvious out. So hopefully that'll help make things a little bit easier. Judges don't have to quite rely so much on their eyeballs, because again, depending on your angle or point of view, it may or may not be so obvious whether or not a bottle is in or out. So any questions, at least with checking bottle, in or out? Okay, I guess next slide. Okay, again, so judges, again, to help the proctors. So again, these are some reminders that will be announced. Proctors, you need to watch for pit violations. So remember, there should be no communication, no assistance from coaches or parents with the students. So in particular, coaches or parents need to be escorted outside of the pit area during the work time. So you shouldn't start the 30-minute timer until all parents and coaches have left. Again, there's no communication allowed, either verbal or electronic. Again, no cell phone, no emails, no handing notes or messages, anything like that. Again, team members, we want them to stay inside the pit to work on the robot. Again, that will hopefully minimize the chance of communication. For instance, if there's an emergency or like if a team member needs to go to the bathroom, we actually ask if you have enough proctors that they be supervised while they leave the pit area. But in general, unless there's a extreme circumstance for a team member to leave, they should just stay in the pit for the entire 30-minute period. Again, a violation. Again, teams are not allowed to alter their robots, their robot or any other robot in the impound area. Again, teams should not interfere with any other team's computer or robots. So again, in general, teams should just basically keep their hands to themselves or to their own property. Again, there's should be no destruction of any type of property. And again, we'd like to encourage all the team members to be good sports. So again, we do not want to see like any trash talking or stuff like that. Nothing like aggressive sports behavior. So again, we'd like to encourage all the students to be good citizens, and you'll be polite and respectful of other team members, coaches, staff. Hopefully, again, we will all get along during competition. So that's some, I guess I'll go to the next slide too before we pause again. Okay, other announcements. Again, violations. For instance, if there's like communication between like teams and parents, for instance, in general, it'll be typically the chief judge's discretion. For instance, they might give like a 1 or 2 point penalty for a minor violation. For instance, if a team does a major thing like destroy someone else's robot, that, for instance, could be disqualification. Again, we certainly want to encourage spectators to assist also with making sure again that this competition is fair. So again, if anyone sees coaches, parents, team members, if anyone sees anything that's suspicious, they should certainly notify like a judge or proctor, some official volunteer as soon as they see anything suspicious. In general, I'd recommend it's probably going to be up to the chief judge of the game to try and investigate those activities, or the chief proctor if you have a chief proctor. Again, pictures are welcome in competitions, but we ask again no flash photography because in general the flash can interfere with some of the robot sensors. So please, I think we'll try and recommend that you have like no flash photography signs clearly marked, hopefully to remind spectators of this rule. Any questions about these reminders? Or again, basically just general guidelines for competition day. Okay, I guess I'll move on if there's no questions at the moment. Again, we realize pretty much many of these playing materials are handmade, so unfortunately we can't be perfect, but we do try and be as good as possible. So we expect a maximum of 3 millimeter, again, discrepancies in any of the stated dimensions as a maximum. Ideally, we try and get things closer to 1 millimeter, but sometimes that's not quite humanly possible in certain materials. If playing fields, again, if you have lots of teams, there's multiple playing fields, it'll be the responsibility of the chief judge to make sure, again, that all the playing fields are consistent. So again, we want to make sure, again, that all the teams have basically these same conditions when they compete, at least during each round. Of course, the conditions can change from round 1 to round 2, but at least during any given round, the playing field should be as consistent as possible. And I think we emphasized earlier that contestants need to be 1 meter away from the playing field. We would also ask that judges maintain that distance as well, again, so as not to interfere with any robot sensors. Judges, one important thing, at each site there should be an official chief game judge. If judges are not sure about what they saw or if they have any questions about the rules, they should certainly consult with the chief game judge if if there's any questions at all. And certainly, again, coaches, you should encourage your team members. If they have any questions for the judges that they feel are not satisfactorily answered, they should ask to speak with the chief game judge. Generally, the chief game judge will have the final decision. any competition. Right. Any questions before we go on to the score sheet? Is our next major topic.
I've had a private conversation with one of our guests regarding the site host making sure that the adults, the spectators, are out of the area, the pit area. We do agree that that is a great idea in order to maintain as much of the integrity of the pit area as possible. It is definitely up to the site host. Unfortunately, we cannot police that in every case. We do recommend it. We do encourage that. But some sites might not have the space for spectators to exit to. I know I visited a couple last year that the sites had plenty of space where the team tables were, and so that the parents were gone and coaches were gone from the area completely, but some sites did not. So we do recommend it and encourage that, but it's not something that we can monitor at every location, so it might not be the case.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next slide because we're about halfway done with the slides, maybe a little bit halfway over our allotted time. So hopefully we can make up some time. Wait, so next slide is referring to the score sheet. Again, certainly one of the most important things for judges during the round, make sure you watch that ping pong, at least one of the two judges, watch that ping pong ball very carefully. Again, you need to determine when the ball is hit. Is it hit by the legal, the basic, surface of the pencil, or was it hit, by the robot, or by, something that was attaching the pencil to the robot? Again, if it's not a legal hit, the maximum number of points is 7. And again, basically all you need to watch for if the ball was not hit by the pencil is, does the ball actually eventually make it outside the field, or does it kind of go off the bottle but stay on the field? And in general, of course, these balls do have a tendency to roll quite a bit. Basically, if the ball ever rolls outside the field, it's considered outside the field. It's possible the ball could then roll back onto the field. As long as the ball moved outside the field at some point in time, it would get 7 points if it's not a legal hit. If the ball never leaves the field, but it does leave the bottle for a non-legal hit, it's only 5 points. And basically, if the ball never leaves the bottle, it gets no points. What's going to be more complicated is if it is a legal hit, because then there's basically 5 different cases. Although hopefully the home run, as long as you're watching it carefully, should be easiest to determine, right? A home run has to be completely clearing the fence, over the fence, between the poles, or at least above the poles, and the pole is considered in. The fence is not considered in. So that's the maximum points, 30. If, for instance, the ball hits the fence without first hitting the floor, so if the ball hits the fence on the fly, that's 15 points. So for instance, it's possible the ball could hit the fence and then bounce over the fence, or the ball could hit the fence and then bounce down. It actually, for simplicity, doesn't matter where the ball bounces after it hits the fence. If it touches any part of the fence, it is not a home run. But keep in mind, the poles are not part of the fence. So hitting a pole is a home run. Hitting a fence, not a home run, and only 15 points. Okay, then, for instance, if the ball bounces before hitting the fence and bounces over the fence, that's kind of what we'd call in baseball a ground rule double. That's only 13 points instead of 15. So again, but that would not be a home run if, for instance, the ball bounces first. Then, for instance, just like similar to the outside field definitions is similar as we talked about earlier. But again, for a legal hit, the ping pong ball gets 10 points instead of 7. So it's again very important that judges determine was the hit legal or not hit by the pencil. And again, similarly, if the ball never leaves the playing field but does leave the bottle, it gets 8 points for a legal hit, but only 5 points for a not legal hit. Okay, at least I'll just try and finish this slide, and then I'll pause to see if we have any questions to be answered by the Robofest coordinator. Okay, so in addition to the ping pong ball, again, where that goes, you need to watch that very carefully as it's flying in the air, and if it bounces or not, or just goes directly on the fly, over the fence or hitting the fence or between the poles. The second other thing, actually, the ping pong ball is the major thing judges need to check for during the 2 minutes. After the 2 minutes, one of the things judges will check is the number of bases visited. And that would be the number of Lego blocks moved completely off the playing field. Again, the playing field, of course, will be white in color. And since we have the black gaffer's tape outside it, again, basically these Lego blocks would need to be, at least nothing on the white, only on the black. Or, of course, they could even be moved further than the 5-centimeter gaffer's tape. And judges, again, you just count those. Circle either 0, 1, 2, or 3. It's 10 points for each base that's completely moved off the field. And now I think I'll pause to see if Shannon can answer any of the recent questions, because I think it looks like we had several questions.
We had several questions. Let me go back up a little bit, making sure that I even understand all the questions, because I'm a little confused by a couple of them. Okay, the game is scored, the ball is scored on the fly. So the judges watch for where the ball goes. The question is, the ball, so for example, I think we addressed FAQs coming up, but if the ball is hit and hits the fence, so basically touches the fence without first hitting the floor, but then bounces back and ends up on the mat, we will score it with the highest points possible. So we will be scoring it as if it touched the fence. And so regardless of where the ball ends up at the end, if it touches the fence, it's the full 15 points. So then everything else is scored after the robot is done and the time has been recorded for the robot. So the question, what if the pencil hits the ball and the pencil at the same time? I'm assuming you were asking what if the pencil hits the ball and
the ball stand, maybe?
Ball stand or the bottle. Help me, I think Jeff asked that question. So if it doesn't really matter if the ball, the bottle. So if the pencil hits the ball, if it also hits the bottle at the same time, it's still a legal hit because the pencil hit the ball. If the pencil hits the bottle and the ball gets knocked off the bottle, that is not a legal hit. So if the pencil hits the ball and it just so happens to hit the bottle at the same time, it is considered a legal hit. So, okay, there's that. So Neil's asking, my reading is that it has to clear the fence and be on the other side for full points. Again, if the ball goes over the fence, clears the fence as a home run, but then somehow hits something, a spectator's shoe or something, and ends up bouncing back into the field, as long as the ball went over the fence throughout the process of being hit, it doesn't matter where it ends up. We will take the initial, the highest points for that score. Okay, are there any additional questions regarding this top half of the score sheet? Okay, I think we can move on.
Okay. Well, so this bottom half of the score sheet. Okay. And again, I think pretty much everything on the bottom half, just like item number 2 above, is checked at the end of the run after the 2 minutes. So again, after the robot has either stopped at home base and rested, or after the 2-minute timer has ended, check the trash objects. Are they completely removed from the field? Again, there's either 0, 1, or 2 of those. 10 points for each trash object removed. Then check the location, check the ball stand. Again, basically check to see if it's inside the circle or not. So again, as long as it's inside the circle, we're going to assume it remained at the original location. But it is possible that a robot could have moved it out and then back in. As a judge, you don't have to worry about whether or not that happened or not. So, and then that's, again, worth either 5 points or 0 points, depending on whether or not the ball stand is still inside the circle. Number 5, again, the robot must come back to home base, stop, and rest at the end of the run. So again, after it's done all the other tasks. If, for instance, a robot comes back to home base and stops early, judges, you might want to ask the team if the robot's going to keep continuing before you end the run, because certainly we want to give each team the chance to earn as many points as possible. But to get this 10 points here for stopping, that can only occur after all points have been earned. The robot will not be allowed to earn points after it's given credit for these 10 points. Okay. And again, it's going to be very important if the robot does stop and rest at the end of the run. One of the judges needs to make sure they accurately record the time, hopefully to the nearest second. And again, if you have a timer that counts down, just write down the number of seconds left on the screen, and you'll actually record that in that bottom right corner.
There's a question regarding the top half of the, can we go back to the top half of the score sheet?
Sorry.
Okay, the question is, if it hits the floor and then touches the fence, is it 10 or 15? One of the examples, video examples we have, it's really hard to tell if it hit the floor first or if it hit the fence first. If you have to wonder if it's really, I mean, I had the benefit of a video, so I could play it over and over and over again. The judges won't have that benefit. If it's a question of did it hit the floor first or did it hit the fence first, give the higher points to the team. We want to encourage these students, and if it comes close and it's really hard to tell, then we're gonna err on the side of higher points for the team. So, but again, it might not be obvious if it hits the fence first. If it bounces on the floor and then goes over the fence, that's a lot easier to see. But there was one of the videos you'll see coming up. It's hard to tell. Does it touch the floor? Does it touch the fence? So in that case, we would award the 15 points. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, and I think in general, I think that's pretty much our general philosophy on all the scoring. Basically, if you're in doubt, err on the side of giving more points. If you're not sure what you saw, just assume that the team earned a higher number of points. So back to the second part. Again, the robot does need to remain intact throughout the entire run. So again, 5 points for that. So again, if the robot falls apart, again, they would not earn those points. Remember, there's a maximum of 1 reset. Of course, if there's no reset done, there's no penalty. But again, teams are only allowed 1 reset. And so if the team does ask for a reset and it's granted, again, that would be a single 5-point penalty. Judges, then it's also important that you add up the total scores and write that in that box. Again, a perfect score this year will be 100 points. Remember, again, you don't have to worry about the order that these tasks were done, except for, again, stopping at home base at the very end. And make sure, again, if the robot does stop, and certainly, of course, if it, at the end of the run, that you record the time left in seconds. Of course, if the robot takes the entire 2 minutes, actually, please make sure that you write down 0. So that way we don't worry about if you just forgot to write down the time. But if there's no time left, again, please definitely write down a specific 0. Questions about the bottom half of the score sheet? I think the trickiest thing this year on scoring is going to be watching that ping pong ball very carefully. And I think we definitely recommend that the judges make sure, again, that you position yourself in a very good position, to try and see, was something a home run? Make sure you can see, the fence, as well as possible to try and, determine, does the ball hit the fence first or like the ground first? Or any questions on the score sheet, top or bottom? Is it okay if I move on, Shannon, you think? Or?
Yeah, go ahead and move on. Thank you.
Okay, so here are frequently asked questions. And again, I'll try and summarize and paraphrase these. Hopefully we can make up some time, but again, these are printed in the official rules. Okay, so again, as far as, deterring home runs, again, I'd say just, pretend, that the poles, go on forever vertically. So basically, if you extended the poles, if the ball would be between, or, if it would hit an imaginary pole, it's a home run. Next question. Again, robots can expand. They don't have to go back to the small size. So they can expand at any time, once they're allowed to start. Again, remember, you only get credit for a legal hit if the pencil hits the ball. So, for instance, it's possible that you might try other strategies of moving the ball, but remember, it's actually a maximum of only 7 points if it's not a legal hit. So we would definitely not recommend that the ball be moved, carried, or touched other than by the pencil. Again, remember, of course, if a team asks for a reset, at that point, they can repair the robot or change programs. Of course, remember, once a robot is moving autonomously, then they could not, of course, touch the robot without incurring a violation. But at least if the robot doesn't work correctly the first time, again, they might possibly fix something. But keep in mind, the 2-minute timer never stops. So if they need to repair the robot, they have to do all that within the 2 minutes. Actually, now the 5-centimeter mark is going to be actually more visible if we use the gaffer's tape around the edges of the fields. So hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier to determine that 5 centimeters. Yeah, so again, remember, if the ball hits the wall, it's the 15 points. It doesn't matter where it bounces to. You can use any type of materials. We certainly actually recommend maybe using gears or something, or springs, again, to create some more force with your bat. Okay, so that's page 1 of FAQs. I'll maybe try and go through these a little more quickly, but Shannon, if I need to go back, please let me know. Second page of FAQs. Again, judges just need to look and make sure there's a visible stop, so there's no time limit. Again, basically, if the robot, just kind of slows down but doesn't actually stop, again, the team should not get the 5 points. The robot must come to a complete stop and rest to get the 5 points, up to the judge's discretion. Again, site hosts in general, you'll be in charge of setting up the fields. Again, the main thing that we ask site hosts to do is make sure everything is consistent. Certainly, taping down the field can be helpful, although you certainly need to be careful about the way that you tape down fields so that, like for instance, like the tape doesn't present a reflective surface that might interfere with the black gaffer's tape. But site hosts, again, we recommend that you have your chief judge, inspect the fields and make sure that they're all set up, if there's multiple fields, properly. Okay, and basically in terms of this case here, you don't actually have to swing the bat to at least get credit for a legal hit. So for instance, you could, do what's called in baseball bunting. For instance, the pencil might just kind of stay put relative to the robot, but the robot kind of moves the pencil into the ball. Typically, of course, though, that will not result in a home run. You'll probably need to swing the bat to be able to lift the ball over the fence. But as long as it's only the pencil that contacts the ball, that is a legal hit and can at least get more than the 7 points for a non-legal hit. That's page 2 of FAQ. And again, if you have questions, please ask them on the chat. I'll try and I think get through most of these FAQs, unless Shannon, please ask me if we need to pause to answer a specific question. Page 3. Again, to be a legal hit, it doesn't really have to be a clean hit. So for instance, as we said before, the pencil could possibly contact the ball stand, although that could be dangerous because it might move the ball stand. But for instance, it could kind of be a sort of a little bit of a slow, oh wait, actually, sorry, no, I do need to read this carefully. No, so I mean, it does need to be a hit. For instance, you can't like lift the ping pong ball with a bat. But again, judges, again, please use your discretion. Again, if you're not sure, again, whether or not, what prolonged contact is, again, as long as it wasn't, much more than a split second, again, I'd say, give them credit for a legal hit, unless you're sure, again, like that the, for instance, the pencil lifted the ball or something, as opposed to just hitting it. Again, some teams might come up with creative ways of moving the ball, like a liquid, water, or gas or something. But again, only the pencil hitting the ball the ping pong ball can be credited as a legal hit. Okay, remember, yes, it's very important, right? The main thing that's scored during the round is what happens to the ping pong ball. Everything else, including like the bottle, right, is only scored at the end of the run. So, for instance, it is possible that a bottle could be moved outside, but then if it's moved back inside before time expires, the teams will get credit, again, basically for the ball stand remaining inside the circle. Teams are not allowed to, harm any of the playing field materials, including the ping pong ball. Again, for a legal hit, you may only use one pencil. So if teams have more than one pencil on their robot, judge needs to watch carefully, make sure that only one pencil contacts the ball. And in fact, for teams, we recommend, just to make sure that you don't mistakenly not get credit for a legal hit, it's probably safest to only have one pencil on your robot. So that way it will not be possible for more than one pencil to contact the ball. And again, right, the robots can either swing the bat, or they can, again, kind of like just move the robot forward, and the bat could stay stationary, would at least possibly get maybe 10 points or something. Okay, so those are, I think, let's see, 3 pages of FAQ. Any questions about the FAQ?
I have been tracking, and we will be adding these questions to a document online. So if there's additional questions, please email them to me. We will answer them, and then we will add this information to a document on the game. We will talk about the 5-centimeter placement robot starting when we talk about up to this point, we've been talking about the rules. Now we're going to be talking about site host and judging and specifics to how we follow these rules. So we will be talking about bot starting again as far as the judges are concerned. Okay, I have another question. Can the pencil be broken and fastened together to have an increased width? No, the pencil must be the 19 centimeters is the longest standard pencil. It can be shorter than 19 centimeters, but it cannot be longer than 19 centimeters from one end of the pencil to another.
Okay, again, of course, please keep asking your questions via chat, but I think I'll try and move on to our next few slides. Again, so one thing to keep in mind, again, for all game, remember, again, judges' decisions are final. Again, on each playing field, there are 2 judges, and then the chief judge, again, should be separate, again, overseeing all judges, for instance, if there are multiple playing fields. Typically, we advance about 20% of teams, from one, local qualifier onto Michigan championships, and then, also advancing teams from Michigan to world championships, which, of course, includes teams from other states and countries. For site setup. We'll actually, I think, show you a sample of the playing field initial setup document in a couple slides. Again, it basically has all the information site host needs, and in general, we'll probably recommend that you have your chief judge in charge of this setup. So we recommend site hosts that you give this document to your chief game judge. Again, if you have more than 8 teams, we recommend that you use at least 2 playing fields. Again, depending on how many teams you have, you might have as many as 3 or 4. But of course, the more playing fields you have, again, the more setup will be required. Again, if you have multiple playing fields, we recommend they're numbered. So again, teams can figure out which playing field they need to go to. Again, remember, you space the playing fields out so there's enough room for team members and judges to be 1 meter away from their own playing field, and of course not closer than 1 meter to any other playing field. Right. And if you have a very limited space, again, that can be sometimes a little bit of a challenge. We also recommend, again, if you have a lot of teams, that you have practice fields as well. And again, so in addition to the official playing fields, if you can allow it, sometimes, again, we typically, like at Michigan championships, will allow teams to practice on the official fields as well as what are dedicated practice fields. The confidential items, we'll talk about those, I think, in the next few slides. But again, basically all these setup documents, again, they need to be kept secure. Again, this has information that, again, will not be unveiled to teams. Impound table and the placemats. Again, we recommend that you have a dedicated person to be proctor of the impound area. It's very important, of course, once robots enter the impound area, they do not leave that area. So again, it's very important that someone watch that impound area. Also, we recommend you have at least one chief proctor, and again, hopefully judges can also work as proctors to make sure, again, that again, parents and coaches are not in the pit area or are not providing assistance to teams during the 30-minute work period. Okay. Then the next slide. Again, here's of course, it has a similar picture of that playing field we looked at earlier. This is a sample, again, of what might be given for if you have a junior division. Again, senior teams, of course, would have a rectangular rather than square playing field. Again, all dimensions of the playing field and the fence are set the day of the competition. Those don't change. And so again, H3 in that thing is, I believe, the length of the poles of the fence. So this is the top part, again, of a document given to the site hosts. The bottom part has the information, again, that basically, again, the chief judge should be in charge of for the setup. Again, the distance to the playing field can change from round 1 to round 2, but that is announced and unveiled. So for instance, it could be like 40 centimeters for round 1, 39 centimeters for round 2. The starting orientation, again, the direction the front of the robot needs to face is also unveiled before the 30-minute work period. So for instance, it might be east for round 1, north for round 2. Okay, the distance of the trash objects from the center bottle is never announced. But again, the people setting up the playing fields, hopefully supervised by the chief game judge, will need to know that distance D3. And the orientation of those trash objects, we'll show that in the next slide. It's also important that where it says do not announce that is kept confidential. Again, those are the bottom and top half. In general, you'll have a single page describing setup of either a junior or senior game. Any questions on at least setup? And we'll show you some pictures, images specifically about how you'll use setup like the trash objects and other things later. Just the general guidelines for setup. So I think I'll move on since.
Can I ask the question of all the participants at this point? Do we have any site hosts currently online? Because that really determines how much time we should allow for questions. Otherwise, we can step through these without too many more pauses. Okay, let's switch through these, and when we get to the end, we'll ask all the questions at that point.
Okay. Yeah, so moving at least just basically for site up, again, if you have multiple playing fields, just again, keep in mind, you need to have at least, you need to have actually exactly 2 judges for playing field, as well as a chief judge, and we also recommend that you have a scorekeeper and someone to watch the impound area. And again, you can either use a centralized timer, or depending, again, sometimes we've used it like judges like with their smartphones, some type of app might serve as a timer, especially if you only have like one field. I would like to emphasize in the impound area, again, robots, once they enter the impound area, they cannot leave. Charging is not allowed in the impound area. So for the work time, again, the chief game judge will unveil the unknown factors. The main unknown factors that are going to be unveiled is the distance from the playing field to the fence. Again, that will be, teams will be able to practice with that distance for each round. Again, that distance can change from round 1 to round 2. And the robot starting orientation, teams will know that prior to each round. And to make it easy for teams, again, I think we'll probably try and print out some copies so that you can give those out.
Will be provided to the teams. We will be sending them to the site hosts to pass out.
Yeah. So that way, again, in case the teams don't hear, the announcement of the chief game judge, they have their own hard copy with these unknown factors. Again, we recommend that, again, you have an MC, or again, the chief game judge can kind of serve as an MC if you have limited volunteers. Again, we recommend that you give like 10-minute and 5-minute warnings before the end of the work time, so teams know when they need to start getting ready to impound robots. Okay. Again, basically, if a coach or parent does need to speak with a team, for instance, like a non-game related thing, for instance, there's like some emergency message or something, personal message. Again, we just ask that, again, it be supervised under a proctor. And again, hopefully, again, there'll be minimal amounts of this type of interruptions, because again, the teams do lose time from working on the robots. Okay, and let's see, yeah, the next slide actually shows, again, a list of guidelines for proctors and a violation report form. For that, again, I won't go through at least all these details, but again, I think we mentioned this kind of earlier in an earlier slide about what a proctor needs to look at. This is actually the information given out to proctors. And again, the types of violations that can occur, again, which could be incurring a penalty. Basically, if a proctor sees something, they need to fill out a violation report, which is the bottom, it's kind of like a half page in that bottom right-hand corner of this slide. So again, they need to report, again, the team number, did it occur, during the work time, during impound, during a break, was it, before, during round 1 or 2, list the type of violation, was it, communication between a coach or a parent, was it tampering with someone's robot or laptop, or the other type of violations. And again, in general, we recommend you proctor, if you have multiple proctors, you can turn that into a chief proctor, or again, you might turn that into the chief game judge, would be another person. But whoever's in charge of the proctor violation reports needs to collect those violation forms. Like we have a couple of questions, or?
Yeah, the question is, will the teams be provided the width and height of the mat? The answer is they will have to measure that. They can measure it when they first arrive. And the next question is, after the judges score the rounds, is it their job to reset the field? And I'm answering that yes, the judges will reset after each round. It doesn't take long, or they will reset during the round if a reset is requested.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's correct. Yes, judges will be very busy resetting, like between teams, between rounds. Basically, anytime the playing field needs to be reset, the judges are in charge.
That's why we recommend 2 judges per table. It makes reset pretty easy. One judge can grab the first base and bottle. The other judge can do the second and third base and the trash objects, or whatever they decide to do. But the jig will be provided. We'll be talking about that in a moment.
So I guess next slide for the impound procedure. And let's see, I'll try and just, again, yes, we'll print out, again, just like we print out ID, I guess thing for the team tables, like the ID, I forget what we call them, but will be like a placemat, again, just a single piece of paper with the team ID printed on it. Again, that's where the teams will place their robots. Again, judges, you need to make sure, of course, you inspect, write the size of the robot and, the labels, the team number in front before allowing the robot to go on top of its placemat. We hope, again, it can be done as efficiently as possible within 5 or 10 minutes. We definitely recommend you have at least, one volunteer, to supervise the impound table. And that probably would be someone who's not a judge, although it could possibly be someone who also works as a proctor. Because typically once the 30-minute time period is done, you'll definitely need that person more around the impound table, not necessarily in the pit area. Hopefully to make things smooth, we recommend just one member of the team presenting the robot to the impound area. But we can do allow 2 team members to go up to the competition field. And remember, for judges, you need to check for only 1 controller for junior teams. And judges, you should also check and make sure there's a standard pencil. Back.
Question is it possible to have a team name on the label? Oh, the team name is on the impound table. The team sign
Yeah.
provide to the site host includes the team number very prominently, but then the team name is also on the sign, but it's not as prominent.
Yeah, sorry, I think I misspoke about that there was the team name as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think we definitely want the team number, but both team number and team name is okay, like on the labels.
Question, I misunderstood the question. The question is will we, when we print the team signs, team signs do have the team name, but it's not as prominent as the number. It's not, question is not regarding the robot. I misunderstood. It is team sign on the team impound table. So.
I think I'll try and move on. Hopefully in about 5 minutes we can get to the videos. Let's see again, so for checking the impound, here's a picture again, what we used at warm up. Again, we'll provide something similar to site host. There's basically like a 35 by 35 cardboard. In fact, again, so if you need to check the height, again, you can use 2 of these in tandem. Then again, to check the expanded dimension, again, you'll take a standard 19 centimeter pencil. Again, whatever is kind of the longest dimension of the robot, you need to check and make sure right that's no more than 54 centimeters in that longest dimension. And of course, everything else except for that longest dimension should definitely fit inside the 35 by 35 centimeter square. And then you also need to check and make sure that it does not violate the 35 centimeter height requirement. Oh, yes, actually, the picture, I think, the cord, actually, I think, in general, we don't really count the cords as part of the robots. This one, I think, actually is kind of a little bit misleading because of the angle. I did not shoot this straight from above, so I believe the cord actually is inside the 35 by 35. It just looks like it's off because of the angle from the direction I took the image.
Either way, it doesn't matter. We don't.
Yes.
Because the cord could be smushed in. And it's the body and the hard parts of the robot. It has to be within the 54 centimeters.
Okay. Let's see. Moving on, I guess, to the next slide. Again, right, as long as the robot is within dimensions, and for juniors, it doesn't have too many controllers. Again, judges, make sure you then place the robot on the team placemat. Again, once the robot enters impound, it cannot leave. We actually do encourage teams to impound their robot early. That'll hopefully make it so that, again, it takes less time, after the 30 minutes. But again, there's no requirement to impound early. Again, basically, once the 30-minute work period ends, that's when, again, we recommend that you allow either 5 or 10 minutes to impound. And in general, we recommend that you keep it to a firm timeline. Again, if teams don't impound promptly enough, again, they may not be allowed to participate in, for instance, like in round 1 if they're not ready. So it's very important, again, that you make sure all the robots are impounded prior to the start of the game rounds. Again, in general, we recommend that you not allow charging during impound. That way you don't have to worry about chargers and things like that. We actually recommend probably that teams turn off the robots if they want to save battery during impound. But they should turn the robot off prior to the robot entering impound. And then they can turn the robot on once they remove the robot from impound when they're ready to compete. Right. And again, if the robots do not, impound within, the time limit, they will not be allowed to compete. And remember, it is a violation to touch or remove robots from the impound table, your robot or someone else's. And again, at the judge's discretion, that could be anywhere from just like, some points penalty to possibly disqualification from the round. Yes, I just saw that question about EV3. Yeah, I personally tend to prefer keeping the EV3 robot on just so that way you don't have to wait for it to boot up. But again, some teams are very concerned about the battery running down. A lot of it might depend on how recently it was from when they charged the robot. In general, I'd say it's up to the team whether or not they turn the robots on or off. Certainly, we will wait for the robot to boot up before it competes. Yeah, in general, they should have some time for the robot to boot up while they're waiting. All right, so those are the impound procedures. Okay, yes, and I think yeah, Srinivas just made a very good suggestion. Again, definitely so as to not to delay competition, we definitely recommend they start their robots, turn them on, as soon as they pick up the robot from inbound. There's a few more slides before hopefully then we can look at maybe some sample videos. Placing these trash objects. So for instance, we'll provide the site host, and again, probably have your judges implement this jig. For instance, for warm-up, we had like a little, again, cardboard cut out with the appropriate dimensions. Again, for round 1 and round 2, it was slightly different distances. We actually recommend, again, you use that cardboard to place from basically from the edge of the cup to the edge of the bottle is the distance that we have labeled D3. So for instance, in one round, again, it might be in the north-south direction. I think for round 2, for instance, on warm-up, it might have been east and west instead of north-south, or actually I think we did alternated between junior and senior for those 2 rounds. But of course, the cups could be at some angle, doesn't have to be at right angles. But again, we will provide site host with a jig, again, to help place the trash objects in the appropriate location. Keep in mind, this distance D3 is never unveiled to the teams. So again, that's definitely one information on the site host document that needs to be kept confidential.
Something that we also learned during the warm-up that and it's definitely up to the chief judge, whether the jig is placed directly against the edge of the bottle or along the circle outline around the bottle. As long as it's consistent throughout all the playing fields and all the judges, it doesn't matter, because again, this distance is not ever given to the team. So for example, if they want to make it quicker to reset, if they find that it's easier to reset after a few practices, to just line it up with the edge of the circle as opposed to the actually touching the bottle. The D3 is technically edge to edge, but because this again is never unveiled to the teams, as long as it's consistent, it will always be. The rules indicate that it's edge to edge, the edge of the bottle to the edge of the cup. So if it was moved out a centimeter to the edge of the circle, it would still be, it would be 11 centimeters. So the minimum is 10. As long as it's consistent along all the fields and all the judges, it doesn't matter to us. We were learning that it's a little quicker to do it by the edge of the circle, because that way it doesn't touch the cup and the bottle. You have a little bit of a gap to be able to pull the jig away without moving everything. So like I said, as long as the judges are consistent, you can use the edge of the bottle or the edge of the circle to measure your distance. So it would always meet. The minimum is 10, so making it larger than 10 is okay.
Placing and starting the robot. Actually, I think we decided, just to simplify matters, we're not going to provide jigs.
We are not going to provide jigs for qualifiers. We may use the jigs for Michigan Championship and the World Championship, just because of the difference, just the sheer volume of sites. This is something that we wanted to talk about, the 5 centimeters. You'll notice that this robot, although there's nothing up in the air, this is not an actual hitting robot, this is a sample. If there were a pencil hanging over the edge onto the white part of the mat, we would still measure the closest part to the floor. You'll notice that sensor is sticking out further than the wheel on this robot, so we're measuring to the side of the sensor. So whatever's closest to the ground, about 3 or 4 centimeters off the ground, up to 5, I think 10 centimeters is what we said, how tall that wood was. So the judges will place the robot, again, as long as we're consistent in what we're looking for, and the judges all know how to place the robot, and this is something that we need to talk with the site hosts and chief judges very carefully, that how we set these up. As long as they're consistent, the edge of the robot should be considered what's closest to the floor, or hovering close to the floor, not necessarily touching like a wheel. Srinivas, I hope that answers your question. Does the same apply? During the game. Oh, I see what you're saying. Like during the game, yes, whatever's being used. The 5 centimeter during the game for the violation, I think, is what your concern is, and that makes good sense to talk about that. The judges will be looking for, and originally it was an approximate 5 centimeters. I mean, we weren't going to measure the 5 centimeters. We weren't going to provide it, but then with the issue with the contrast between the floor and the mat, we wanted to make that consistent. So we ended up with this 5 centimeter gaffer's tape, which just kind of, gave our 5 centimeter away. So the rule violation is we're looking for robots just basically wandering away. If the robot travels off the field and immediately turns around and goes back on the field, we're not going to get out a measuring stick and say, wait, that was like 5.2 centimeters away before it turned around and came back. It's up to the judge's discretion if the robot left the field further than 5 centimeters and then came back during the round. So again, we're measuring the 5 centimeters based on what's close to the floor. I see what you're asking, Srinivas, about the pencil sticking way over onto the mat, but we want to make sure that the robot stays, the body of the robot, or the sensors on the robot, the wheels of the robot, whatever's the widest part of the robot near the floor is staying nearest within 5 centimeters. And again, it's approximately 5 centimeters in the rules. So if the robot goes a little bit over 5 centimeters but then comes back away, it comes back on, the violation is truly if the robot leaves the floor and doesn't come back, or leaves the floor really far and doesn't come back. So the 5 centimeter approximation is, now that we have it shown, it's going to be a little bit easier to tell, but yet we're not going to get so technical that, okay, it was 5 and a little bit more. But if it's 5 and then keeps going, it's a violation. If it's not, I hope that, yeah, I think you understand what I'm saying now. Okay. Any other questions regarding starting the robot? What we were doing during warm-up too was, say, for example, this is an east orientation or west orientation or whatever. We're measuring the distance of the robot, but we're also lining up the other angle of the robot along the front of the side of the mat. You'll notice here that the robot is back, so that what we're seeing as the front of the mat, closest to us in this photograph, is also, there's an imaginary line there that the robot will also come up to. We should probably add additional photographs for that, for the site setup. We will be sending information to the site hosts as well with some detailed pictures on how to start the robot and how to set things up too. So yes, whatever sticks out further, whatever sticks out furthest, and that might be the high up, the pencil or something really high up. For the distance between the robot and the mat, it's whatever's low, but for the rest of it, the imaginary plane of the side of the playing field between first base and third base, or I'm sorry, home base and third base, we'll use the front of the robot, the furthest sticking out part. And again, the starting location, we're gonna hope that the site hosts are consistent. There might be slight differences between qualifiers, but that shouldn't impact a team because they're only allowed to compete at one location. So as long as each site is consistent with their starting location between the teams that are at their site, hopefully there shouldn't be any issues. We know that there might be some discrepancies between sites, however.
Okay, then maybe we'll move on to the next slide. Let's see, so for judging tips, actually I think this is just kind of reiterating some of the things that we've done earlier today. It's very important, of course, that you check, make sure you have the correct team up there, so the correct team gets the correct score. In addition, of course, to watching the ping pong ball, you need to check violations during the run. You need to reset the playing fields, if a team asks for reset, as quickly as possible. And of course, make sure right between teams, right, that everything is reset, so it's the same for all teams, during each round. You need to make sure you enter the time remaining carefully. And again, definitely, again, it's right, 2 judges per table. Definitely make sure you work as a team. Again, if the robot does not stop at home base as the last thing, you need to make sure you record the time remaining as being 0. Right? If it never stops, it doesn't get credit for finishing all of its points early. Again, the chief judge, basically is in charge of interpreting any all questions. If there's anything that we haven't anticipated with the FAQs or any issues, unexpected issues come up, again, judges, definitely make sure you consult the chief judge. Those are some tips. Then ending the round, again, make sure the timer's recorded. Make sure you get initials from the team player. And again, right, once the team player initials, that means they agree with the score. There should not be any dispute of scores after that initial happens. Judge, make sure you also initial the score sheet just in case, for instance, if there's like a data entry error. Again, the scorekeeper can go back to the judge and double check and make sure they interpreted your numbers correctly. Again, chief game judge, again, should be in charge of the score sheets, make sure they get to the scorekeeper safe and sound. Okay. And again, chief judge, again, we recommend that you check the score sheets and make sure everything was added up correctly, although hopefully, again, coaches definitely recommend that your teams check and make sure they add up the points to make sure they agree with the recorded score. Okay, then for the scorekeeping, for a second, there might be a question. No, I think it's just a comment. Okay, scorekeeping. Again, we'll provide the site host with an Excel file. Again, we recommend that you have a dedicated person as a scorekeeper to be in charge of entering that data. Again, it's important that they enter the score for each round and the time remaining. But for instance, all the other computations should be done automatically by the score sheet. Again, so teams can check and make sure that there were no data entry errors. And we recommend that you project the scores just basically the left hand of that score sheet. So for instance, again, we prefer again that you not project the rankings or what the best scores are. At least make the teams at least try and figure that out for themselves. And that, fortunately, I think, is the main, at least, slides. So what we have left, hopefully, maybe you'll try and do this in less than 15 minutes so we can finish under 2 hours. Starts a little longer than expected, but I appreciate all of you staying with us. Or let's see if there's a question before we go on to the videos.
Okay. Question, we're using the same playing field for both rounds, yes. 6-1 refers to a different configuration of length and width. Let me think about that one for a minute. I'm not sure. I want to go back to that, but let me go on to the next question, and then we'll go back to that first one. If the student doesn't agree with the score, how do they proceed? The judge and the student will talk about the score, and the student can plead a case. And there have been situations where the student says, oh, but wait, it did this. You can see here, and the judge can say, yes, you're right. Sometimes the judge will say, but this is what happened. So the student can ask for the judge to reconsider a score. So I'm hopeful that the students will not just sign blindly, but yes, realize that they have the opportunity to disagree with the judge if the judge is wrong. Even if the judge isn't wrong, I mean, they'll have a conversation. Do you have anything to add to that, Dr. Cartwright?
I would say just probably, again, if there is a dispute between, the judge and the students, they should definitely, consult, bring it up to the chief judge, I guess, who can make the final decision. The chief judge, again, can listen, to the students, explain what they, saw as happen, listen to the judges. And again, hopefully the chief judge can explain their ruling so that the students agree with the final ruling.
And yes, Srinivas has a good point regarding the dispute. The judges should step away from any spectator, so spectators cannot overhear. I do agree that the adults coaches and parents should not be part of that conversation.
Yes, I agree as well.
So the children or the students can plead their case. So yes, I definitely agree. That's a great recommendation, that if there is a dispute, that they step up to the scoring table or they step away from the playing field completely. Or obviously if they're looking at the playing field, that they keep the conversation, or perhaps the second judge can maybe stand between. I'm not sure that would work. Yes, that's a good idea. We'll make sure that we provide that guidance to the site hosts. The next question. Adults take videos. Yes, we would discourage that too. Okay, I don't know how we're gonna, again, we aren't at every site, so if we could be at every site, we would manage things all the same way, but it's really up to the site host. So let's get back to the question regarding the playing field configuration. Neil was asking the question, if it's the same playing for both rounds, this is indicated in table 1, but 6-1 refers to a different configuration of length and width. 6-1, can you explain what
6-1.
6-1?
Well, at least if it's in this picture, right, if the L, right, refers to the fence, which does not change, and actually W refers to the playing field, which doesn't change, right? The only things that can change, right, are D1, the distance from the playing field to the fence, and D3, right, the distance from the bottle to the trash. Everything else, right, is the same for round 1, round 2, and practice. Well,
yeah, the students will have to measure W, H, H1, I'm sorry, H2 and H3 and L. All the dimensions that aren't provided, D1 is provided, everything else the students can measure. That's shown on this page. The trash objects won't be there until after the robots have been impounded, so they cannot measure where those are. So all the dimensions the students are eligible to measure during when they first arrive at the site, and then D1 will be
right, unveiled. Yeah, they can measure that if they want to, but that's given to them.
Well, it won't be set up until after the work time starts, so
right.
It'll be there for practice originally. I mean, it might be, but it won't be. It's not guaranteed that it'll be set for the initial practice time.
Let's see, I think hopefully at least we'll watch maybe a couple videos, I'll see. And obviously I realize that people need to get going. I appreciate you for staying with us, but we have 5 videos prepared. Actually, they're all pretty short.
If you would like to watch these videos on your own, again, after the fact, if you could provide comments in the, we've put our score, what we feel the score is, and any questions that we might have regarding the score in the comment section on these YouTube videos. If you want to add a comment saying you disagree with the score because of this and explain yourself, we would be happy to review those, definitely. So yeah, please do that if you have a chance.
Okay, so let's see. Actually, I think I may already have these videos up. Wait, here it goes, I think. Okay, so we can look at the first one. So we have 5 videos. This is on our posted on our Robofest website.
Can you full screen that?
Yep. And let me just go back just to show the everything. Okay, right. So in this case here, I think starting orientation, well, move pretty fast, but I think it might have been west. Right, and this robot, I think, actually went to third base first. Now watch this ping pong ball carefully, I think, in a few seconds. And I think that one might have hit the pole, or it might have been a bounce that I saw. And unfortunately, I think the judge might have had a better angle than this video. But I believe that was a home run. Oops, let's see, let me go back. I think I want to escape that. Okay, so that was our first video. Actually, it looks like I'm playing something in the background. Okay, so let's see, I don't know, if you're watching that, did anyone notice any violations? I don't think there were any violations. Was that one a perfect score? Did anyone see anything that was not perfect? Let me go back to that one just real quick. Oh, yep, so at least as a comment, we felt that was a perfect score. Okay, so that was our first video. Maybe I now go to the next video. Let's try this one. And I'll make it full screen. So this one might be a little harder to see. There we go. Now we got a clearer picture. And of course, make sure you watch anytime the robot gets close to the ready to bat the ping pong ball. Go back to the previous one. And if I could go, let's see, the end of that video. Pause it, right? Basically, I think once the robot has stopped, right, it's done earning points. So if I remember that video, I think it never hit the ping pong ball off the stand. It never moved the trash objects, but I think it did clear all 3 bases. I think that blue block is entirely off the white in the bottom right corner. So let's see. If you're scoring at home, we scored that one as a 50. Let's see. Actually, let me try and find the score sheet. You can probably go to Robofest. see if I enter the game. Try to remember where it is.
Or get involved, game,
Yep, get involved game.
score sheet.
All right, there's the rules if you need the rules, and then we got score sheet form. Okay, so again, to look and see how that one got 50. Again, right, I think it got 0 points for number one, right? I think you got 30 points for the three bases. Nothing for the trash. 5 points for the ball stand on the original location. I guess the robot, I think, did stop at home base at the end of the run. So 10 points for that and 5 for intact. So is that 30 plus 5 plus 10 plus 5? Is that 50? I think that's how we came up with 50 on that one. Or any questions on that scoring? I can go to video number 3 real quick. We just have 5 videos prepared. Actually, we've got lots of other videos, but we tried to pick our 5 most representative ones. There's lots of videos on our robofest.net.
This is an example where the student is too close to the.
Yes, the student should be 1 meter away.
Be a little bit further back. I think the judge noticed as well in that case. He just had.
Oops. Right in that time, I think the ball hit the fence on the fly.
I think this was the question that we had regarding did it hit the fence or did it hit the floor first?
Okay. Yeah, it was really hard to see. Yeah, because it looked like if it hit the fence, it was the bottom of the fence. And then remember, right, everything else right now, the trash objects, right now you score at the end of the run. I think the robot has come to home base and stopped. Let me go back to the previous one. And let me go toward the end of that one. I think the robot's going to stop at home base, I think, now. Right, so now, of course, right, is when the judges should check and see. And notice, unfortunately, right, that one trash object the student robot had removed, but unfortunately, it then moved it kind of back onto the white playing field. So I think it only gets credit for one of the 2 trash objects off. I believe all 3 Lego blocks are off. And again, I think we decided to give the robot the benefit of the doubt of hitting the wall before bouncing, but it was awfully close. Looks like we have some comments maybe or questions.
The question was, are we going to put yellow tape around the fields to keep them at 1 meter away? We've talked about that. I know we did that last year. Because this situation, the judges have to get in and get out to reset quickly during a reset situation. We are not recommending to the site hosts to cordon off the game field. However, we can suggest that they put some masking tape down on the floor. We did end up doing that on our furthest, when we had our warm-up, there was a field that was very close to the edge of our playing area, and there were people standing very close to it, so we had them stand back, put down a piece of masking tape, and they were able to stand far enough away. But just it's too hard for the judges because they do need to get in and reset the field, and time doesn't stop. So we don't want to add time or a safety issue to judges to have them step over a caution tape to get into the field area. So to answer the question, we will not be recommending they use a caution.
What's that? It's the right one. Anyway, yes, and at least on this one, for the video we just watched, again, right, if we give them credit for hitting the fence first as opposed to bouncing, right, that would give them 15 as opposed to just 10 points for only outside the field. And looks like, again, we scored that one. Again, if you count it as hitting the fence first, as 75 points total. If I go to the score sheet, I think that would be, right, 15 points for the legal hit, touching the fence first. I think all 3 bases were removed for 30 points. Only 1 trash object was removed for 10 points. I believe the ball stand didn't move for 5 points. The robot, I think, came back to home base at the end for 10 points, and it was intact. And so far, I think we haven't seen any resets in the videos. Right, minimize the wrong thing. Okay, let's see, I think we had 2 more videos, if you have a few more minutes to spare. Okay, so that one, there might have been a question whether the robot left the playing field, but I think at the judge's discretion, right, they decided since the robot came back, they did not count, right, this robot is making very wide turns. Okay, so at least for that robot, it looks like it did not return home at the end of it. Right, so I think this would be the, right, where the judges would look at where, for the points, looks like everything was removed from the table. And if I remember right, I think, did the ball hit the fence?
Bottle was moved from its original location.
Ah, I did notice that. So yes, that's one thing the judges need to check at the very end. So, let me go back to that, if we can see. I forget how early it was when the robot moved the bottle, but
Bottle was at the end. It hit the ball very last.
very last, okay.
After the trash was moved.
After the trash, okay. Yep, the ball's still there. Okay, let's maybe. Oh, there you go. All right. Well, at least the robot touched the bottle. Although to me it looks like it might have went back to its location.
I think it was moved significantly enough that it's
Significant?
hard
Okay.
to tell from this angle, but
Yeah.
it was definitely jolted quite a bit.
Yes.
I think it moved actually towards the fence.
Right, but obviously, of course, like with the judges, it'd be very easy for them to go up to the table and see if it was still in the circle. Not as easy to see from the video. Right, so that one looked like that we didn't score yet, but that's one for you to score. So, but of course, assuming that the bottle actually did move, right? I'm trying to remember. My memory is short. Did the ball clear the fence?
I believe
Was
it
it
did.
you think it was a home run?
Let me see if I have that score sheet. I scored of these videos. I don't know why that one's not there. What number is
Yeah.
this?
Unless I played the wrong video by mistake. Looks like this should be the fourth one down.
703. Yeah, I don't have a score for that one in my sheets.
Okay.
I'll have to score that one again. Comment.
Okay, but obviously, if you're a judge, you need to remember better than I did whether or not it was a home run. I think it's so the main thing here, right, was it looks like it would not have gotten the 5 points for the ball remaining on the original location. But otherwise, I think it successfully removed the trash objects and visited all 3 bases. Okay, then our final video, our 5th video.
This is an unusual case where when I need to ask the question of you, Dr. Cartwright, when they would stop the timer.
Yeah.
Although
Well,
the robot came back to home base and stopped, it hadn't completed the mission of removing the bases from the field. So would the timer keep going even though the robot had stopped?
right. So with that one,
Wouldn't ever be involved in a tiebreaker situation,
right.
so time wouldn't necessarily be as big of a factor. But would the score stop when the robot stops, or does only the robot continue, the time keep going if it doesn't complete all the tasks?
Yeah, in this case here, I would say to be safe, the judges should record the time when the robot first stopped. Because to me, that would be the end of the run. And the end of the run was less than 2 minutes in. But yes, I think it would probably be very unlikely, right, that there would be 2 teams, right, with less than perfect scores.
Yeah, score for this one was a 70. It's a home run.
Yes, I believe
Zero.
the team can say they are done. I just Shrinivas just had a comment. So, and when I was watching the video, I wasn't sure if the judges were waiting to see if the team wanted to reset or not or something. But yeah, if it's obvious the team does not want to reset, because for instance, this team could have asked for a reset to try and earn more points. But keep in mind, if the judges reset the table right, then everything goes back and right, the team has earned no points unless it earns something after the reset.
Right. The rules clearly state that the only one that the judge can stop the run, the judge will stop, the timer will stop when the robot returns to home base and stops. But we need to clarify, I think, we'll do this offline and add to the FAQs and for the site host, is that if the robot doesn't complete all the tasks, does the timer keep running even though the robot stops at home base? So we will need to clarify that internally and provide that information out.
Yeah, but in drawing, it's certainly going to be, I think, most important that the judges keep an accurate time, when the teams are doing very well, right? Because it'd be the teams involved in the tiebreakers is when we really need that time.
Yes.
Okay, and I think those are at least, hopefully those 5 videos illustrate some, basic situations. In fact, I think if I go back, forget the original. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, I think if we go to, let's see, home or videos actually, I guess, right? There's a whole bunch of other videos. So if that wasn't enough, there's lots of other videos you can watch. Okay, and finally, I think this brings us to our last slide. So remember again, everything that we talked about today, you can find on robofest.net. We'll be adding some new materials, again, new FAQs if we get them. And again, we encourage you to go to robofest.net yourself. Again, look at more videos, practice scoring. Again, you can find this PowerPoint and other materials. And if you have more questions, we can wrap up if you have any remaining questions. Oops, let me go back to that slide.
Thank you all for attending. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. Oh, good. Actually, I didn't notice that. Looks like we have Emma here from Florida, I guess.
We do. I talked to Emma this morning, or actually this afternoon. And I think we had a couple of other site hosts I did notice, but they didn't raise their hands.
Okay. Yep. Thank you all for participating.
I think, Chris, when you log off, you end the session. So I will follow up with you in the future very soon.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, good night, everyone.
Good night.